we are going to look at solving some basic algebra equations. So, number 1, copy it down. You might notice the parentheses squared and you might think, oh, well, I should multiply that out. But really, if you isolate that part instead, it'll make the problem a lot easier. So work on getting x minus 1 squared alone. Pause your video and see if you can get x minus 1 squared alone. Okay, so hopefully the first thing you did was add 2 to both sides. Then remember, you cannot distribute a 2 into a parentheses that is squared, so you need to move that 2 to the other side. So you need to do the opposite, which means divide. So now I have my x minus 1 squared equals 36. So I want to get rid of the squared. Once you isolate the squared, you can square root both sides. But there's a super important step you have to remember. Anytime you square root both sides, you could get plus or minus, and then the square root of 36 is 6. So this problem has 2 solutions. You will do x minus 1 equals 6, and you will do x minus 1 equals negative 6. Solve both of those to get your 2 answers. Anytime you see something squared, you're probably going to have 2 answers. Okay, moving on to B. Again, there's like a complicated piece, right? The absolute value bars have an x plus 2 in the middle. So start by getting those alone. So write the problem down. You cannot distribute into absolute value bars. Never change the insides of an absolute value. So instead, just like the problem up above, work on getting that alone first. Pause your video and isolate absolute value of x plus 2. Okay, so as long as you followed that rule, never distribute into an absolute value bar. You would have added the 1 and then divided by 2 to get the absolute value alone. Then remember, absolute value is distance. Absolute value of 7 is 7, and absolute value of negative 7 is 7. Notice both options could equal 7. So that means the insides, the x plus 2, that could just equal 5. And then when I take the absolute value of it, I get 5. Or the insides, x plus 2, could equal negative 5. Because then when you take the absolute value of negative 5, you get positive 5 like we want. So again, 2 equations means we're going to get 2 answers. So finish solving. Notice I did not change the inside of the absolute value. 2 answers for our solution. One thing I should mention, if you're solving the problem and you go along and you get, I don't know, x plus 5 equals negative 6, and you think, oh, well, Mrs. Hodge said I should make 2 equations, x plus 5 equals negative 6 and x plus 5 equals 6, that is wrong. The insides of an absolute value, or the answer to an absolute value, cannot be negative. This has no solution. The answer to an absolute value can never be negative. It has no solution. But our problem worked because it equaled positive 5, so we knew to keep going. Okay, moving on. Fractions. I don't know about you, but I'd rather not deal with fractions. So let's write the problem down. And while we're writing it down, see if we can figure out what the common denominator would be. What do all of those denominators multiply into? Hopefully you know the common denominator would be 6x. Everybody's divisible by 6x. But I don't want to make a common denominator. I want to make them go away. So I'm going to multiply everybody by 6x on top. As long as I do it to the whole equation, that's still legal. We chose 6x because nice things are going to happen. 3 goes into 6 2 times. And x cross out. So now, when I multiply what's left, 2 times the 2 here and the x here, multiplied together gives me 2x. No more fraction, plus. Same idea over here, we're dividing, we're simplifying the fraction. 2 goes into 6 3 times. Now what I have left, I already got rid of the denominator. What I have left gets multiplied together. 5 times 3 times x gives me 15x. Problem says equals. Same idea. 6x and 6x goes away. Everything I have left, 4x plus 1. I just turned your fraction problem into a super simple equation that you can solve. Pause your video and finish solving this. Okay, hopefully you got 1 over 13. Don't feel bad if you get a fraction, and please don't make it a decimal. Just leave it as 1 over 13. Okay, part D. Same idea. X is in this square root function, so we want to get that square root function alone. Take a minute, pause your video, and get square root of x, oops, it says minus 1 alone. Okay, so just like if it was squared or if it had absolute values around it, you cannot distribute the 3. So instead you need to subtract the 1 and then divide the 3 to the other side. We're trying to make the left side less complicated, so move everything to the other side. Now to undo a square root on both sides, or on one side, we're going to square both sides. Remember, when you square, the square root cancels out. And 4 squared is just 16. There's not like 2 answers or anything crazy like that. Add the 1 to get x alone, and x would have to equal 17 for this problem to work. Okay, so hopefully this was just a quick review of solving different types of equations, and I hope you guys are doing good.